There are a few fan explanations I've seen that try to address this somewhat. 1. During the dark age of technology and Age of Strife, a lot of water was exported away from Terra, maybe in ships, but also maybe simply inside human beings. Trillions and trillions of humans over hundreds and hundreds of generations, drinking and growing and emigrating. It's possible. 2. Water was recklessly harvested for spaceship fuel. 3. There is a lot of water left in the 41st millennium, but as the entirety of Terra is covered in urban sprawl, possibly hundreds, if not thousands of meters thick, almost all of this water is actually circulating around in pipes, inside reservoirs and cisterns, used to cool down systems, to water food inside large industrialized greenhouse complexes and so on. There is lots of water, but none of it just lies around in seas or lakes except maybe aristocratic pleasure gardens. 4. It may have been ripped away by warp storms during Old Night or the Age of Strife. Now, that being said, here is the official explanation, which I don't believe makes sense scientifically, but hey, it's fantasy, am I right? Enjoy. Terra in the 41st millennium is an imperial hive world, the largest in the galaxy. The Earth was stripped of all forms of natural resources many millennia ago. Its soil is utterly barren, and its atmosphere is now a fog of industrial pollution. Massive, labyrinthine edifices of state sprawl across the vast majority of the surface. What remained of Terra's oceans after the thermonuclear wars that scarred the planet during the Age of Strife boiled away in the years after the Horus Heresy due to the immense heat produced by the hundreds of billions of people who have been compressed into the world's limited living space. All liquid water to meet the Terran population's needs is now delivered from orbit by freighters who take large ice-bearing comets from the outer Sol system and bring them into Terran orbit to be melted down and dispersed to the population. Many mountain ranges have been leveled, perhaps all but the Himalayan range, which remain untouched due to the genetic engineering laboratories said to lie beneath them, where the Emperor created the Primarchs and the first Space Marines after the Unification Wars more than 10 millennia ago. The chambers of the Astronomicon also course throughout the whole mountain range, despite being devastated during the Horus Heresy and by the terrible wars fought across the surface of the world by the nations of techno-barbarians during the long Age of Strife. Terra is still the most vastly populated and built-up hive world in the Imperium. Beneath countless layers and millennia of urban accretion, catacombs hold older cultures radically different from the surface ones. Much of the population of Terra exists in the most terrible squalor, their greatest hope that one of their offspring might be accepted into the Adeptus Terra, the priesthood of Earth and bureaucracy of the Imperium, as a menial, an adept of the lowliest sort. A square meter of land on Terra costs more than a palace on any other hive world. Only the most wealthy citizens can afford to own a small section of land. Terra's entire surface, with the exception of the Antarctic region, is covered in labyrinthine edifices of state, including the Imperial Palace, the Ecclesiarchal Palace of the Adeptus Ministorum, and the many departmental headquarters of the Adeptus Terra, the imperial government. The headquarters of the Imperial Inquisition on Terra lies beneath the ice caps of the southern polar region of Antarctica and is one of the most secure installations in the entire Imperium. Terra was also originally home to the massive concentrations of industry known as orbital plates, which in earlier times were referred to as space elevators. By the time of the Great Crusade in the 30th millennium, most made use of anti-gravitic technology and no longer had any need to be anchored to the planet's surface. These orbiting cities were old, even in the time of the Unification Wars, but during the Horus Heresy, in the years before the start of the Siege of Terra, the Primarch Rogel Dawn, who had been named Praetorian of Terra by the Emperor, and was thus in charge of its defense from Horus's invasion, had them all dismantled, moved, or abandoned over questions concerning their safety and loyalty. In the 41st millennium, there are still countless orbital defense platforms circling Terra, and the Throne World is the most heavily fortified and protected planet in the galaxy. By the time of the Unification Wars in the early 30th millennium, there was only one remaining ocean on Terra, the so-called Great Ocean, which was actually the remains of the ancient Pacific Ocean. The size of the Pacific was vastly smaller than in prior eras, due to the vaporization of a massive stretch of the ocean during the nuclear wars that had consumed much of old Earth in the lost years of the Age of Strife. This missing portion of the Pacific stretched from the Marianas Trench down past Australia and all the way to the frozen continent of Antarctica. The Atlantic Ocean had also been largely vaporized, as the great body of water that had once been near Europe was now mostly gone, particularly to the south of what had been the Iberian Peninsula. Other bodies of water may still have remained during this time, as a great sea is recorded to have been present in the region of Eurasia, where the Caspian Sea had lain in ages past. These bodies of water still existed at the start of the Horus Heresy in the early 31st millennium, but by the time of the 41st millennium, Terra had no freestanding bodies of water, having become a true ecumenopolis, a world completely covered by the dense urban areas of massive hive cities. The Emperor had sought to create artificial bodies of water to replace what had been lost in the wake of the Unification Wars, but by the 41st millennium, no liquid water was visible on Terra's surface. Within these human hives toiled the tens of billions of Adeptus Terra bureaucrats and serfs required to keep the decaying heart of the Imperium of Man pumping. Terra is the heart and throne world of the Imperium of Man, and serves as the headquarters for many of its most important Adepta and other organizations. Most importantly, it is the homeworld and resting place of the Emperor of Mankind. The most important places on Terra, and the headquarters of the vital imperial organizations based on Terra, include the Imperial Palace. One of the largest structures on Terra, the Imperial Palace is more like a sprawling hive city than a single edifice. It covers the better part of the northern hemisphere and is guarded by the Adeptus Custodes, the superhuman praetorians of the Emperor who rarely leave the confines of the palace. It is the heart of the administratum, as well as the home of the Sanctum Imperialis, the great throne room of the Emperor and the location of the Golden Throne. The palace is divided between the inner and outer palace. It is described as an endless black hive of forbidden technology and subterranean passages delving deep within the bowels of the planet. Eternity Gate, the largest entryway into the inner Imperial Palace's Sanctum Imperialis. A mile-long passage leads to the Eternity Gate, lined with the banners of thousands of the greatest and long-dead Imperial heroes, including Lord Commander Solar Macarius. It constitutes the end of the Galactic Pilgrimage Trail, or the devotees of the Imperial cult, and is itself the most important pilgrimage site in the entire Imperium, for almost no one is ever allowed entrance through the Eternity Gate into the Sanctum Imperialis. If you're still watching, please like and subscribe. About 99% of my viewers are not subscribed, so it would be a huge help. Drop a comment with your thoughts and suggestions. Until next time.